Man, I love Bandai's movie monster series. Sometimes abbreviated as MMS, this toy line, consisting of soft vinyl figures from the Godzilla franchise, and occasionally other franchises as well, has recently entered a golden age in my opinion. For the past few years, Bandai has released dozens of quality figures with very nice molds and paint jobs, for the most part, for this line, depicting many monsters from across Godzilla's storied history. However, quite a few kaiju have still not received the MMS treatment, so today I decided to rank the top 30 Godzilla monsters I'd like to see join the movie monster lineup. That's what we'll be doing on today's episode of The Toku Professor. Welcome back for another class, students, and hello to any new attendees out there. I'm the Toku Professor. Let's dive right into the rules for today's ranking. First of all, this is my personal top 30 most wanted MMS figures, and thus this will all just be my subjective opinions, so you're free to disagree. Secondly, even though the movie monster series so far has quite a few figures based on properties not owned by Toho, I decided to keep things simple and just pick out Toho monsters today. Rule number 3 is, expect some obscure monsters, because I really like it when the lesser-known kaiju become figures. I actually considered putting this bag of plants from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 on the list just because that would be such a funny figure, but I refrained. Sorry, Shipniokus fans. And the final thing to note is how I ranked these figures. I think we're all aware that there are some Godzilla monsters more likely to eventually receive a figure than others, so when the obvious picks get announced, it's usually less exciting, at least for me, than with someone like Baragon. In order to not have my list be too skewed in favor of the less obvious monsters, I tried to imagine that the movie monster series line was about to come to an end, and Bandai was only going to release one more toy for it of my choice, and all other monsters would never get one. So, I attempted to arrange the toy candidates based on how likely I would be to choose that monster. Okay, that's everything I want to cover for now, so let's see who we've got at number 30. Coming in at the bottom spot, which isn't really bad since there are tons of choices that didn't make the list at all, we have Zone Fighter, Toho's Ultraman ripoff. I think few would argue that this comrade of Godzilla deserves a movie monster series figure. He's just not too high of a priority for me because I almost always prefer monster figures to hero figures, since their molds are generally far more interesting. It'd be great if they added Zone Fighter monsters too, but I didn't put any of them on this list. At number 29, we have Gazora from Space Amoeba. He is one of 2 Space Amoeba monsters on this list. I'd be happy if they made him, but not devastated if they didn't. At number 28, see what I mean about me liking the obscure monsters? I cheated for this spot and a few others on this list and stuck 2 monsters in it, namely Daigoro and Goliath from the movie of the same name. I'd definitely prefer a bright blue Goliath over Daigoro, but let's face it, they wouldn't release him unless they also made Daigoro, so I'll gladly take them both. We have a much more well-known monster at number 27 in a not very well-known form. This is Armor Mothra Leo from the Rebirth of Mothra series. I'm typically not a huge fan of airborne monster figures because they are hard to display, but a Mothra with this giant of a wingspan and this fancy design would definitely be cool. Number 26 is Maguma from the 1962 film Gorath. Again, I'd be fine if they skipped him, but he'd be nice to have. Number 25 is the Millennium from Godzilla 2000. Not a monster I see people talking about very often, possibly because of how underwhelming the CGI for it looked. If only they'd gone with Tokusatsu. But I'd be more than happy to add a Millennium figure to my collection. Orga, on the other hand, isn't on this list because I already have a 1999 version of him which looks pretty nice. Not that a new mold would be bad, though. From Return of Godzilla, Shakiris takes the number 24 spot. Most people probably see these guys as not very interesting big bugs. And I do too, honestly. But I'd still like to have a nice sleek figure of one of them in my collection. Number 23 is the other Space Amoeba monster I referred to earlier, Kamibus. Unfortunately, his opponent Ganymede didn't make it into my top 30 because I thought the crab looked a bit too similar to Ebera, who already has a nice movie monster series figure. Kamibus looks much more unique though, and also deserves a figure more since he has appeared in a Godzilla movie. Next up, at number 22, we have the Gargantuans, Sanda and Gyra, from the War of the Gargantuans. Yeah, they're ugly, but I'm sure many of you would agree they should get movie monster series figures eventually. At number 21, we have Behemoth, who first appeared in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Probably my favorite totally new monster to come out of the Monsterverse, though we'll have to see if the new Empire changes that. By the way, I'm not including any Godzilla x Kong figures in this ranking since the movie isn't out yet. But I already know there are monsters in this film that I want MMS figures of. Number 20 is Megalon, specifically his design from the film Rodan. The suit used to portray this monster in his debut film was massive and very cool. I'd love to have a figure based on it. In 19th place, we have the Shin Universe Robo, a very odd giant robot, poor Ultraman, created to promote Anno's Shin series, and also created to be a toy to entice collectors to shell out all their money. I haven't fallen for this trap yet, though I have to admit I've been tempted. I can only hope that they put out a far less expensive movie monster series version before I give in. At number 18, we have Yamato no Orochi from Orochi the Eight-Headed Dragon. If Bandai produced a really movie-accurate mold of this guy, it would be a sight to behold. There is a super rare Bandai 1994 version already, but I think it's time to give the monster another go. At number 17, we have the giant lizard from King Kong vs. Godzilla. Cute little guy. I know exactly what I'd do with this toy. Number 16 goes to the man-eating plant called Man-Eater from All Monsters Attack. This one is just up here because of how silly of an addition it would be, and I generally really enjoy silly figures. There's already this piece of merch for the plant, so why not an MMS figure too? Halfway through the list, we have number 15, Dogora, a jellyfish-like monster I covered on this channel back in 2022. Not sure exactly how easy of a figure Dogora would be to display, but I'd gladly try to figure out how to fit him into my designated area for MMS figures. Please don't kill me. Number 14 is Godzilla from 1998. As with many other Godzilla fans, I think this redesign of the King of the Monsters was pretty atrocious and disrespectful. But I've got to admit, his far too unique design wouldn't actually look too bad amongst my other figures, especially if it had a really clean-looking movie monster series mold. Plus, Zilla was also present in Godzilla Final Wars where he got what he deserved, so I think I'm allowed to want an MMS version of him. Next up, at number 13, we have Giant Octopus, who first appeared in King Kong vs. Godzilla. He's just an octopus, but he's shown up in multiple Toho films, and his mold would look very different from anything released for the line so far, at least other than Virus from Gamera Rebirth. Number 12 goes to Kumonga, either the Showa version or the Final Wars version. A really obvious addition. I have a feeling the spider will be incorporated into the line at some point, and I'm looking forward to that day. Kamakurus would have been in my top 30 as well, but Bandai did put out a pretty nice one in 1993. It's really expensive now, but it's there if I get desperate. Many of the kaiju, not all but many, that made it onto this list don't have an MMS-like figure currently available, but guys like Toho's version of King Kong, Showa Milgira, and Godzillasaurus do, and that's why they, along with Kamakurus, didn't make the list. But as far as I can tell, Bandai's never made a Kumonga figure on this scale, so he's definitely high priority for me. At number 11, here we go again with me picking something really strange, we have the Smog Factory from an animated segment of Godzilla vs. Hedorah. This factory with eyes and claws for grabbing plants would be a fun and funny addition to the toy line. By the way, there's one piece of official merch of this obscure creature, but it's really rare. And now we have reached the top 10. At number 10, we have Giant Condor, who would make for a pretty uninteresting looking figure, but one I would nonetheless be really excited to get because this guy's battle against Godzilla in Ebirah Horror of the Deep, if you can even call it a battle, is just priceless. If you haven't seen it yet, you're missing out. Go watch it, and I think you'll want a movie monster series figure of this guy too. Number 9 is another monster we covered on this channel, namely the scrapped kaiju Ghost Godzilla, specifically this design of Ghost Godzilla that Shinji Nishikawa created. Bandai has proven that they are willing to make figures of unused monsters, and Ghost Godzilla is definitely one of the more prominent ones. Please note that only this cool design of the monster is what I have ranked here. I would not be nearly as pleased if they just repainted a 1954 Godzilla blue and marketed that as Ghost Godzilla. At number 8, we have another unused monster, Anguirus Hound, a new version of Anguirus proposed for the Heisei series. Definitely an unusual take on Anguirus, and one that would probably look cool in figure form. At number 7, we have my most wanted iteration of the King of the Monsters, Godzilla 1967. Yes, that's right, the really goofy Musuko Goji from Son of Godzilla that so many people hate. I am not one of those people, though I can understand why you wouldn't like it. He definitely looks off. But I'm pretty attached to this silly-looking version of the monster, both because I love his debut film, it's in my top 5 Godzilla movies, and because he's just so funny-looking. Definitely a figure that would make me pleased. At number 6, we have Frankenstein from Frankenstein vs. Baragon. An MMS version of this man-turned-monster would be awesome, and I really hope Bandai is considering him as a figure candidate. Our first monster in the top 5 is Skeleturtle, aka the Mysterious Bones, that appeared in the background in Mothra vs. Godzilla, and were moving for some reason. Despite just being a background object that wasn't even alive, I don't think. It seems to be pretty well known and would make for a surprising and exciting figure in my opinion. Cute as well. Speaking of cute, number 4 are the Dorats from Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. Why these cute little guys haven't gotten any good figures aside from those that came packaged within SH Monster Arts King Ghidorah, I don't know. They're a Dorat bull. It's weird that they have fuzzy green hair, though. Who would ever have green hair? Anyway, the Dorats are definitely one of my top kaiju to receive a figure in the future. Top 3 now. Number 3 is a no-brainer to be added to the line, namely Gabara from All Monsters Attack. Being the main opponent of Godzilla in a movie, he definitely deserves a figure. He should be the next MMS kaiju they release. Even though he's a super obvious choice, I'd still be excited if he was announced. It'd be so great I could just buy him and stick him right in with my other figures easily because he doesn't have a long tail. Does it bug you other collectors at all when you just can't display your figures properly because your monsters' tails are so long and take up so much room? You wouldn't have that issue with Gabara. Definitely a monster Bandai should release soon. My top 2 are not nearly as obvious. In fact, they're creatures most people probably wouldn't consider at all. But for me, of the choices I thought of when I wrote up my ranking, these were the 2, well, actually 4, that I thought I'd be most excited about were Bandai to put them out. First, we've got slot number 2, which goes to both Crystalak and Obsidius, who were created for the video game Godzilla Unleashed. It would be amazing to have figure representation from one of my favorite tokusatsu games. I think Crystalak especially would look fantastic as an MMS figure, with all the crystals all over his body. I've been seeing a lot of people talking about the Pipeworks video games, and I think figures of these guys would give people a nice blast of nostalgia. And finally, at my number 1 spot, I've got Mamagon and Shukra, the monsters designed by Gingo Odaka in the film Godzilla vs. Gigan. Of all the monsters they could announce for the line, I think these are the 2 that would make me the most excited, not to mention amused. In the film they're from, Gingo pitches these monsters to the head planner of World Children's Land as new creatures that could be featured in the theme park. Really weird choice for number 1, I know, but these unusual kaiju were the ones who made it to the top of my list. But what about all of you? I'd enjoy hearing from you guys about which MMS figures or other tokusatsu toys you'd like to see in 2024 and beyond. So please leave a comment and maybe like, subscribe, check out my Toku Figure eBay store, and follow me on Twitter while you're at it. And with that, I think I'm going to finish up because I'm kind of worried about Kishimakun and Pencil Leopard. They haven't popped up all class. So I'm going to go check on them. This has been the Toku Professor, signing off. Where are they? What are you guys doing? You missed a fun class.
Something very important.
Oh.